yet. So, in fact, he puts it on the bottom. So we'll see what he's aiming for. In with the 2 Elf Warrior tokens. Warrior is one of the big sort of changes with Morningtide coming out, very popular, and so many cards are just there by accident. It's like Lunk Errant. It's a giant, but along the way it's a warrior.
Yep. Interesting thing to note with that cream of the crop. Putting the cards on the bottom or choosing to take a look at the top is a May effect, which could potentially be relevant because you only get to keep one of the cards. The rest have to go on the bottom. So if Nikolai Herzog is looking for a runner-runner situation, which he hits 2 cards back-to-back, he might not want to hit the cream of the crop because if he hits one and the other, one of them's going to the bottom, and he could put himself out of a position.
Yeah,
we're a long way from that, but it's an important thing to remember.
For sure. Have you ever noticed that Magic's a really, really complicated game? I think that's why we love it so much, truthfully. You know, I think if it was much simpler than this, we could go and play Snap.
After 13 years, I've seen a lot more Magic players than Tiddlywinks players, let me tell you.
Yeah, that is true. I was County Tiddlywinks champion, actually, but still. All right, so Jagged Scar Archer's in, but we've got Guiltleaf Ambush of his own. A couple of warriors come into play.
Nice thing about that Guiltleaf Ambush with the Jagged Scar Archers on the board is that it's actually a mini giant growth. So you get 2/1/1 tokens, and you +2/+2 on the Jagged Scar Archers can cause a lot of problems for an unprepared opponent.
Absolutely. Well, one impact of the Ming-Shi match going long is that Nico's had plenty of time to put that mistake from his upkeep well out of mind, because that's probably the best part of looking at the local time here. It's 10 to 2 in the afternoon. That is probably the best part of an hour ago, that upkeep.
Yep. And so, it's a bit of a cooler effect, something they do in the American professional football when the kicker has to make a big kick for the extra point.
They ice the kicker, don't they?
Absolutely. They'll call timeout. So Nico got a little benefit there by having that timeout for the coverage.
Didn't help the Green Bay Packers, though, did it? Was it Nate Kading, kicker for the Giants, took down the Green Bay Packers, I do believe?
Nate Kading, actually an Iowa City boy, hometown hero from where I'm from.
I can't believe it. Everything I come up with, these people come from Iowa. Does everybody live in Iowa?
No, hardly any at all.
Just the important people. All right, okay, I hear you. Thorntooth Witch is in hand. Their Weed Poplar Shaman and Seed Guide Ash. So that's what Carvalho looking at there.
What he's working on.
Draws a card. Laser Forest.
Not a bad grip if he can get some land to play it.
And out comes...
Looks like Everbark Shaman to me, and Everbark Shaman's the 3/5. You can tap it to remove a Tree Folk card from your graveyard. Of course, that would include Changeling cards as well, and that would give you the ability to search out 2 forests, put them in play tapped. Now, that might not seem like very much, but it essentially says draw 2 cards. Of course, those 2 cards are lands, and they automatically go into play, but when you're trying to get to 6 mana for a Thorntooth Witch or for any number of other large spells, maybe to play 2 things at once, that's a pretty handy thing to have in common.
Yeah, and just as a straightforward bonus of thinning your library, you're going to see that much, and it's a very incremental percentage. Magic's a game of incremental percentages. You look at a card like Paperfin Rascal. In most decks, that averages out at a 2.38, 2.38. Yep. It's either a 2-2 or it's a 3-3, and you know that's kind of the average. That, and I mean, a lot of the maths behind Clash is really fascinating. If you're a mathematical mind, there are some great articles out there on the web talking about how Clash works. The kind of hidden math of Magic.
Absolutely, and it's a really interesting mechanic. I think for the R&D community that came up with it, it allows you to make sure that you're hitting some of the cards that you want. So early on, if you need the lands, you can filter to the lands. If you need the action cards, you can get to the action cards. And the more players get to hit the cards they need or want, the less variability there is in the matchup regarding mulligans or mana screw or mana flood, anything like that. So it's a really strong mechanic.
That is a Cloud Thresher.
Damage first, then this.
Damage first.
Right? Yeah. Just afraid of missing a window or something.
Afraid of missing a window or something.
Still a remnant from missing that upkeep. He's playing pretty tight. Still no counter on the top of his deck. Of course, he doesn't have any upkeep effects in play, but will be interesting to see if he maybe takes advantage of that rule. Of course, that rule change has come into effect since the time Nikolai Herzog was at the top of his heyday, so it's entirely possible he's not aware of that change and doesn't know that he could put one of the counters on the top of his deck to remind him of his upkeep. We may not see the winner or patrol this game, so it might not matter, but interesting difference between the pros that are from the old school and the new school. Looks like he's considering pretty carefully with those 7 cards. Hopefully he doesn't have a whole bunch of good ones in there, so he doesn't have to put them on the bottom. But at least keeping the best of the top 7 is a pretty powerful effect for him.
Yeah, that cream of the crop is the kind of card. It's one of those hand grenade cards that a lot of bad players will simply not know what it really is or does. A lot of great players can do good things with it. And the people who are in real danger, it's a bit like when you learn to fly. The first 20 hours, you know you don't know how to fly. After 60 hours, you know once again you really don't know how to fly, even though you've got your license. But between 20 and 60 hours, you actually think you can fly the plane. And that's when dangerous things happen. And for those mid-ranking players, Cream of the Crop is a card that you can really just have explode in your face if you don't quite understand the possible things you can do with it.
Yeah.
The kind of card that gives pros an edge.
Yep. And that's exactly the type of card that Nikolai Herzog and guys like John Finkel, even Mike Ron, who's now watching from the Peanut Gallery, all those types of cards benefit them a great deal because, as I said before, more decisions, more options, more better for the good players.
Absolutely. All right, so Herzog ponders his options. There is Carvalho nodding away. It looks not dissimilar to Guillaume Waffatapa. That little finger just under the lip there, concentrating hard.
Kind of reminds me of Yuri Peleg, actually, from the World Championship.
Yes, but with a slightly better barber, maybe. All right, so Cloud Thresher comes in because that's quite large.
Yep. And, of course, it shocks both players in addition to getting 2 damage to all flyers when it comes into play. Nico's going to make a pretty strong play against his opponent's Tree Folk, the 3/3 Vanquisher. And that, of course, has Death Touch, which means his opponent's creatures will die when blocking or when taking damage from it, regardless of whether or
Don't
not
care what the size
they're
is.
bigger. Yep.
It's just in the bin.
And as a 1/2 punch there, the card he revealed to Elf to make sure it costs less, Nameless Inversion.
Oh, hello.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it seems like Scott Johns reporting for the floor, that was what he pulled for the Cream of the Crop. Good card to pull. So worth pointing out that that Nico didn't opt to use Cream of the Crop on that the Vanquisher as he played it. That might be intentional, as we said before. There is cause for not doing it every time.
Oh no!
But it looks like
Nico,
it looks like he just
he's
realized
going,
what's going on.
I can't believe I did that. Looking at that, and he, yes.
Taking some water down.
Take
Should have left it out of my deck.
Should have left it out of my deck. I didn't know.
Same thing happening again. Like, look, top 6, 7, think forever, and then forget my plan. Like,
wow.
And you heard him mention that he took forever to think and then forgot his plan. And what he's talking about is concentrating so long on doing one particular plan of action that you just sort of have a brain fart and forget, after spending so much time coming up with the solution, what your solution was and delivering on that. It's a very common situation that happens to a lot of people. Nobody likes it when it happens, but it is something that comes up.
2 cards? Yeah.
Yep, we're going to see the Thorn-Tooth
Witch.
Very, very important play against Nico.
Big sigh from Nico. Big sigh.
And Nico is a guy who had gotten a reputation over the years as making untight technical plays from time to time. He doesn't have another creature in his hand, so he's not going to be able to utilize the Cream of the Crop this turn.
However, he does have Lignify, which takes care of business, because, okay, 04, that's the irrelevant bit right now. It's lose all abilities, thank you, that's important, that keeps him out of range of that Thorn-Tooth Witch.
Right, and even though he did make a mistake, and he may be concerned that people are going to question his play later, he understands that there's still a game to play. He's still going to get in with his 7/7 and his 3/3. And mistakes are mistakes. They happen. You move on. You keep playing. There's still Magic to be played.
And although you look at the taciturn Carvalho, and that seems to be the attitude of the day, it is quite exciting to see someone who you're inside the head of. To look at Nikolai Herzog and go, I know that guy is bleeding right now and really, really wants this game. And there's something quite powerful about that. Yeah. I'm not exactly rooting for Nikolai, but I really want the mistake itself not to be costing him.
And it's interesting because Carvalho may have an opponent who's potentially flustered, but it wasn't through any action of his own. It wasn't like he even used any mental games to try to get into his opponent's head. Although we did see in the first game that we watched here, in which Nico missed that Winnowing Patrol, Marshall might have been trying to impact